Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're going to be jumping into a coffee Imperial Baltic Porter from Hardywood Park Craft Brewery. They're based in Richmond, Virginia. The specific beer clocks in at 9.4%, which is not only high for a porter, of course it is Imperial, but for a Baltic Porter, very rare to see an Imperial. And then that they added coffee to it, I'm really excited. I've had quite a few beers from Hardywood Park. This is probably the fourth or fifth, and all of the ones I've had prior have been great, so I have very high hopes for this beer. Before we jump in to the beer review, shameless plug here. This is one of my new designs. This is the classic Ben Franklin quote, beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. There's my man Ben up there. I did design this myself, and if you are interested in any of these designs or just want to check and see what I have, thecraftbeercorner.com, there's a link to the shop. I've got 5 or 6 designs up on all sorts of things: t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies, travel mugs, iPhone cases, all that type of stuff, and we have a lot more designs coming. So if you're interested, thecraftbeercorner.com also has links to all of our social media and direct links to our YouTube channel. Okay, now back to the beer. So Hardywood Park Craft Brewery, Baltic Sunrise, Imperial Coffee Baltic Porter, 9.4% ABV. In terms of label art, this one's very plain Jane. It's white and a chocolate brown, dark brown to get you in the mood for coffee. There is, of course, a pile of beans. Very clean design. I like it though. So let's get this cracked. We're going to get this poured right into our porter glass here, gently. All right. Not super duper thick. It's a porter. It's not a thick stout. Nice dark brown, as I would expect from an Imperial porter. All right, going to give that a little room. Porters do tend to be a bit more effervescent, a bit more carbonation active than their stout counterparts. This is obviously no exception. You never really know how the head's going to form, but this one seemed to do a pretty nice job. Visually, not quite pitch black, even though it is Imperial. It is not quite pitch black as you would typically see in an Imperial stout, but very dark brown, just a little bit of light getting through at the bottom I can see. Head seems to be holding pretty nicely. Actually formed reasonably tight. Bubbles on top, so that head's probably going to stick around a little longer than your average porter, but I do expect it to just kind of by the end just have a little pad floating and some residual cling on the sides. Let's give it a sniff. Oh yeah. Well, that smells very nice. It smells very much like a classic porter, but you can 100% pick up the coffee aromas in this. It smells absolutely fantastic. So looks the part, smells the part. Let's jump right in and see what this one's about. Oh man, yeah, that's very nice. That's a very nice porter. Okay, so mouthfeel wise, this one's silky smooth, very creamy, agitating around the palate. It doesn't feel particularly creamy or silky as you're moving it around, but as soon as you swallow, it's just silky smooth, silky smooth. In terms of the weight of the body, it's got some heft to it. It's an Imperial Porter, 9.5% give or take, so it's got a good bit more heft than your average porter, but it's not outside of the realm. It feels pretty much exactly where I would expect it to in terms of breadth of the body. It feels very nice. In terms of flavor profile, this is a classic porter, classic Baltic Porter recipe. That gets tricky to say. So what comes through, and is the case for pretty much any porter, really any stout, it's all about the malt bill. This is a style all about the malt bill, and it's very deeply roasted. That comes through very clearly. You get these chocolatey undertones, and of course the coffee addition they have in here really binds to those kind of earthy sides and to that natural inherent quality that the deep roasted malt brings to the table. Porters are one of my absolute favorite beer styles. It was kind of the beer style that got me into the whole craft beer scene in the first place many years ago. I had a nice Samuel Smith's, and that just blew me away. It's still one of my absolute favorite porters to this day, and it's a beer style I always come back to. Porters are not hard to find, but they're not as plentiful as stouts. Stouts, for whatever reason, are more popular than porters. I love them both, but porters, in my opinion, can be a bit more tricky. There's something inherent about the way that they're brewed and the ingredients used that can sometimes create these kind of weird, funky flavors you wouldn't normally associate with a beer that looks like this. Oftentimes you'll get these kind of raisin-like notes and maybe just this slight kind of funkiness to it. This one is just a true, well-done classic porter. There's no fruity undertones to it at all, which is kind of a common trait. I prefer the ones that lean more heavily on the deeply roasted edge of the malts, and that's exactly what you get here. So it's a nice, deep, roasty malt quality that comes through in the flavor profile here. Chocolatey undertones, and we're talking baker's chocolate. We're not talking sweet chocolate here. And then that coffee comes through very clearly, binds with the roasty edge of the malts, and it's got this really nice, rich, earthy presence to it. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm going to jump back in for a second sip here. As expected, you can see a little cling on the sides, a little pat on the top, exactly as I expected. But we're going to jump back in for a second sip, make sure we didn't miss anything. Oh yeah, that's delicious. Perfect body, perfect mouthfeel, exactly as expected. So silky smooth, just a pleasure on each sip. In terms of the finish on this one, you know, it's got a good presence to it. It is Imperial, so it's a bit more pronounced and flavor forward than your average porter would be, certainly than a Baltic. So it's got that going for it. Plus it's got this coffee. And the flavor really kind of takes about a second, and it has this really big intensification, and it does kind of hold there for quite a while. So it's a real quick ramp up of the bell curve. It's not really a curve so much as a bell plateau. And it holds there, and it finally starts to slowly taper on. So it's a bit of a skewed shape. It's a sharp angle up, holds flat, nice plateau, and then a gentle curve off to the end. Very, very nice. In terms of what you get on the back end, it's very much an earthy quality. That coffee is very, very present, and those kind of chocolatey undertones in the roasty malts. Absolutely fantastic. Whatever coffee they did put in this pairs absolutely beautifully with it. I think their ingredient selection was top notch, and they executed this wonderfully. In terms of the balance of what I'm getting, porter is a style, for me, all about the malts, and that's what's coming through in here. There's nothing funky. The hops that they chose were subtle. It's not the forefront. There's no piney or fruity overtones, undertones here. It really sticks true to a classic Baltic porter formula, just an Imperial style and coffee added. Very, very nice beer. I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, count my scores. When we come back, we'll get this beer ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. So this was Hardywood Park Craft Brewing's Baltic Sunrise, an Imperial Baltic Porter clocking in at 9.4%. This one was brewed with coffee. Hardywood Park Craft Brewery is based in Richmond, Virginia. So starting with the aroma. The aroma on this beer was really, really nice. It was more pronounced than average, but typically porters are not the most aromatic of beer styles, and this ring true. So this was above average for the style. You can really get a sense of that underlying classic porter aroma, and also the coffee came through as well. Overall, above average, it gets a 7 out of 10. For the taste, I absolutely loved it. This was a really, really well done Baltic porter, and Imperial at that. You don't often see Imperial porters, let alone of the Baltic sub-style. And then they added the coffee for just this inherent backbone of richness that pairs well with those deep, rich, roasted malts. This was one of those porters that didn't have any funky, fruity off flavors. It was spot on. I thought it was top tier. The taste gets a 9 out of 10. For the body was exactly what I expected on an Imperial porter. Pushing 9.5% ABV, it gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the mouthfeel was really, really nice. It was very silky smooth, very, very silky smooth indeed. Had the right amount of resistance. The mouthfeel gets a 10 out of 10. For the finish on this was much longer than your average porter. Porter's a beer style. You're not normally going to have a super long finish, say, compared to like a big West Coast style IPA or a big Imperial stout, you know, clocking it at 12, 13%. But this was significantly longer than your average porter, to be certain. The Imperial really played a part here because the flavor intensity was significantly higher than your average porter. And then that addition of the coffee as well really helped push those flavors, lasting much longer than your average porter. Finish does get an 8 out of 10. For the head retention, this did pretty much what I expected. You never really know when you get a porter. As soon as the head finally settled a little bit, I could see that it did have a tighter compact in the head formation than your average porter. They tend to be a much more effervescent beer style, which can help make the heads collapse a lot quicker than, say, their stout counterparts. But this one stuck around a fair bit longer than you see in your typical porter. Thought it was above average. It gets a 7 out of 10. The appearance, exactly as expected. Not quite pitch black, but very, very dark indeed. Appearance gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the balance, this is a beer style all about the malt bill, and this one was just executed masterfully. Had the right flavor profile, nice, rich, roasty notes, some nice earthy undercurrents, and the coffee addition really played its part and blended well with the other flavors that came in there. There were some underlying cacao notes. Really, really nice package, beautifully balanced. Balance gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the feeling and the intangible, subjectively I loved it, gets a perfect 10 out of 10. Finally, is an example of the style. Overall, this beer did very, very well in most categories. Some it absolutely nailed it, some it only missed top tier by a few points. Overall, I gave it a 9 out of 10, which brings the total score on Hardywood Park Craft Brewing's Baltic Sunrise to a 90 out of 100. Folks, this is top tier porter, Imperial at that, and coffee at that in a Baltic sub-style. It doesn't get much better than this. I am always on the hunt for a good porter, and Baltic porters, I'm a big fan. You don't often see Imperials, and when they're done well, just as this one, it's a real treat. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on the notifications, click that bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.